Well, good morning and welcome to the Hope Report, a ministry of the Lindell Recovery Network. I am Melissa Hooray, and I need to let you know we are recording this to air on Tuesday, January 13th. So a special broadcast today with a guest I've been really wanting to get on this show for quite some time. So thankful that you could tune in today on Lindell TV. Also, we're on Rumble and X. And if you missed this show live, you can go to the Hope Report YouTube channel. We've got all of the episodes there. Been rolling this broadcast for almost 5 years now. Coming up in April, it'll be 5 years of the Hope Report. I've added a little extra title on it: Hope for the Life in the Last Days. Hope for Life in the Last Days. I was going to pitch that to Mike Lindell, but I wasn't sure yet. So I'm hoping he'll think that's a good thing, because we've got so much prophecy going on today as we approach, really the end of days. And that's part of what I want to talk to Pastor Brandon Holthaus about today. And I've been watching him for a while. That might sound weird, but I've been following his interviews with Brandon House and watching a lot of the work he does in the prophetic world. And this is a club that I want to be in. I don't know that I'm in the club yet, but I've been trying to get into the club. So today is a good step forward for that. But before we get to Pastor Brandon, I'm going to mix up Brandon and Brandon, as I'm sure they run into that all the time. But a couple scriptures before we get into it. I'm going to start in Esther 4:14. This is a scripture you hear all the time, and you'll hear people mostly apply it to themselves and their situations. But Esther 4:14, for if you remain completely silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your father's house will perish. Yet who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. And those who are students of the Bible, who are dispensationalists, who are reading the Bible literally, grammatically, consistently, contextually, know that this verse is talking about Israel, the Jewish people, that deliverance will always come for them, that they are supernaturally protected. So Esther had this opportunity to go before the king, pleading on behalf of her people, and she rose up to the occasion and did that. And I think this can also have more of an overarching application, as many times the Bible does, but we want to understand it in its original historical context. And it can apply to us today. The Lord maybe called us. He called us to where we are right now. I mean, I'm in Minnesota. Pastor Brandon is in California. And I'm going to talk to him about this, but a lot of times people think we're crazy because we stay in these states, and they say, why don't you flee? You're living behind enemy lines. But who's to say that the Lord didn't bring us here for such a time as this? And so we're going to talk about that today. Especially, we're going to start off with happenings in Minnesota here. But one more scripture before we get to that. Luke 8:17. For nothing is secret that will not be revealed, nor anything hidden that will not be known and come to light. Nowhere is that more true than in the situation that we're facing here in Minnesota. And I think for a long time, it's felt like Minnesota was kind of the forgotten stepchild, just Passover state, flyover state in the Midwest that nobody pays much attention to. Meanwhile, there's a massive amount of corruption and fraud and just takeover by this refugee resettlement chaos going on here now. And most recently, of course, the shooting that happened yesterday in Minneapolis with the woman, Renee Good, and the ICE official, and what happened there. So there's events happening in the world that are unmistakably prophetic, with increasing lawlessness and wickedness. And nowhere could we be rational and sane and say this is the kingdom. This is not the kingdom. The kingdom is not here in any form. It's not here progressively, partially, or any of that. So today, Pastor Brandon and I are going to talk about current events, church apostasy, and end times prophecy. So with all that said, let's welcome Pastor Brandon Holthaus to the Hope Report.
Hey, Melissa, good to be with you.
It's nice to see you. Yeah. I feel like I know you already. And, I just, as I said, you've been in my YouTube playlist, and I know Brandon going back a few years. And also Sharam Hadian has become such a good friend. The first time I had him on the show, I know he's come and spoke at your church. And when I first had him on the show, he said, I was just in Minnesota. And, he comes to Minnesota a few times a year. We're so grateful for him and what he's doing to warn people about Islam. And also Dr. Andy
Yeah.
Woods, who I met
Yes.
about a year ago. And he's been coming on once a month. So I'm going to try, if I can, maybe on the side, get you into my rotation. But I just,
Okay,
the
great.
Lord has led me to defend Israel and to become a student of the Bible. And so my spiritual growth has grown exponentially in the past few years. But I saw you on with Brandon House and JB
Yep.
Hickson the other day. And I thought Brandon did this 10-minute intro and he was just, it was his show, but you were waiting patiently, and Brandon was, so I thought I'm not going to worry about talking too much, but I do want to give you most of the time here. And starting off, I mentioned, you're in California and I'm in Minnesota. They call us California Junior sometimes. And we
true.
have modeled a lot of what we see going on in your state. But recent events, of course, the shooting, we're still reeling from that. And I'm sure you've been watching all of these videos, all these clips, all these different impressions of what actually happened. Riot,
Yeah.
I mean, is it going to turn into George Floyd 2.0? So I want to ask you,
Well,
yeah, go ahead. I feel like I'm behind enemy lines. I don't know if you feel that way.
Well, being in Minnesota and California, we're in ground zero where the fight is. I mean, this is where it's erupting from, and then it spreads and metastasizes to the rest of the country. So there's a reason that God has you in Minnesota and myself, and I think He needs people and wants people in the middle of the battle. And when you're in the middle of the battle, it sharpens your blades, so to speak. It sharpens your irons. There's no doubt about that, because the battle is in front of you every day. And I noticed this, and I'm not going to be negative, but when Christians move out of California, or they move out of these blue states and they go to a red state, sometimes they get a little out of sorts as far as what's really happening, and they can start checking out. And that's been part of the problem with Christianity in the West, is too many Christians have checked out of what's really happening on the ground. They've checked out about what's going on in the public schools. They've checked out about what's going on in the government, and they pull back and retreat. And that's the opposite of what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be salt and light. And so the fact that you're there and fighting in the battle in Minnesota, good for you. That's what you need to do. If God's called you to do that, you're the Esther that's called for that. And so what you'll see is a lot of us that are in the prophecy circles are in some of the worst states to live in, which is the weirdest thing. But it definitely prepares you for what's coming and gives us the ability to forewarn and be a watcher on the wall and tell people, hey, look, it's starting to happen here in California. A 15-minute city they're wanting to develop. A 15-minute city is going to eventually come to your state as well. So we're kind of on that cutting edge because of that.
Yeah, that's really helpful and encouraging, because you can almost start to feel ashamed, or people are looking at you like, how can you even live there? When now what you're saying is so true. Islam is not just for blue states anymore. In the 80s, there was a commercial, orange juice. It's not just for breakfast anymore. Well, Islam is not just for blue states anymore. We see it in Texas. We see it, coming for Tennessee and places that we never thought. So we have to push back against the darkness wherever we are. So it's good to hear you say that, because this Islamic takeover doesn't seem like it's stopping anytime soon. And there's always hope, the hope that we can push back on that. But every time Sharam comes, I'm always saying, do you think you're gaining ground here? Or do you think Minnesotans are waking up? But you look at the situation yesterday, and it's hard to not be discouraged when you see it doesn't matter what happens here with the fraud. With, Kristi Noem did this press conference, and she's saying, ICE agents are here. They're taking 1,500 criminals, felons, they're sexual deviants, pedophiles, murderers off your streets. But you're protesting that. What is going on here in Minnesota? Is this a demonic principality over the state, or am I just sensationalizing the demonic?
No, you're definitely not sensationalizing it. That is the true intent behind it, is definitely demonic, satanic. And what is it trying to do? Ultimately, trying to bring down the United States. And why? Why is this happening? Why are we piping in under Joe Biden's administration somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 million, maybe some upwards to 20 million illegal immigrants that we have no idea. And many of them are these Muslims or that will refuse to assimilate. They refuse to learn the language. They're practicing Sharia law. And for goodness sakes, we just elected a self-avowed Islamicist, communist, Mondami, in New York. So what's going on behind the scenes? Okay, so definitely satanic, definitely demonic, but it is a destruction to America, a destruction of the West, because if they're going to go to a global government, America stands in that way. And honestly, Trump is the monkey wrench into the whole thing that blew their plan apart. They didn't think he was going to get in the first time. They thought Hillary was going to get in, and then she was going to pop the clutch. They were hoping Kamala would get in and she would pop the clutch. But look, they knew that to change the demographics, to change the voting aspects, is you got to pipe in people in your country and flood it, just like they did the European countries and destroyed them with Islamic immigration. That's exactly the same thing they're doing here. And why does the left, why do the people in Minnesota, the Tim Walz and the rest of these public officials turn a blind eye? Well, reports just came out that they're getting kickbacks from the Somalis. These Somali organizations that are getting the money are giving campaign contributions, and it's been documented, to these politicians. So no wonder they turn a blind eye. But what do they want ultimately? They want to destroy America. What do they want? They want a globalistic, communistic, revolutionary type of movement, and to get us away from our American values into a more UN-style globalism. That's what it's really all about. I heard Laura Loomer say this, and I'll shut up after this because I've talked too long. Laura had said on one of her broadcasts that someone, a high-end official in the UN, had explained why they're doing this immigration. And they said that it is to create a North American union. And it's to create a union between Mexico, Canada, and the United States, which, again, if you look at scripture, there's going to be a global government. It's going to break into 10 global regions. And so they're already, the groundwork for what they're trying to do is displace us and bring in new people and create this more North American union. Really, what it is, in essence, is globalism.
Yeah, you're so right there. And, so many people here, they're just deceived. They don't know the agenda of Islam. They think it's simply a religion when we know that it's a geopolitical force that's intent on conquering America, revival of the caliphate. Even peaceful Muslims have that agenda. And it's one way, it's submit to Allah or you're an infidel. But yet here in Minnesota, and I'm sure in California, there's this push for interfaith dialogue, and common ground and common word. And if you push back on any of that, you're an Islamophobe. And as you said, this money just pouring in with refugee resettlement. And now in Minnesota, they say we have 100,000 Somalians, and that may be a conservative estimate according to Sharam. But last night I heard a statistic you might find interesting. Out of all these Somalians here, even those who have been here 10 years, 78% of them are on welfare. But when you hear the state officials here talk about it, all they do is lie and deflect. I wish someone had been doing fact checking with Mayor Jacob Fry last night, because everything that comes out of his mouth is lies. And I don't know if this will ever change, but like you said, they're moving their epic cities into every major city. Do you think this is a symptom of, like you're talking about the North American Union, the geopolitical changes? Is this a symptom of America being given over? Because I want to talk about the church apostasy next, but is this just, failure to repent? Churches getting so weak, churches getting involved in social justice instead of what they should be doing?
Yeah, so the politics is downstream from where the morality should be, and obviously the morality should be carried by the churches. And so for so long, the churches have stopped being the moral anchor of the culture, and so they have worried about more of their nickels and noses. That's how the game is played. So they don't want to ever say anything that offends anybody. So you have preachers and pastors committing the sin of silence. So they never talk about the relevant issues. They never warn about the threat of Islam. They'll say, Brandon, you're Islamophobic, but I'm not. Islam is not a religion. It is a political ideology that practices another form of a constitution called Sharia law. And so the fact that they don't even want to warn about that, right? You have, Rick Warren back in the day doing the Yale document with all these Christian leaders saying, we worship the same God. No, you don't. The Islamic God is Satan. I'm sorry. It's not the same God. So anyway, but that's been the problem. Okay, so then the culture moves because the backbone of the culture is gone. The church is not there. It's entertaining goats rather than feeding the sheep. And so the culture continues to slide. So there's nobody anchoring the culture anymore. And politics is downwind of that. And so we shouldn't be shocked about the kind of politicians that we have now that simply have no moral anchors whatsoever. And they're willing to sell out our country and bring in Islamic invaders and who they know will destroy our culture. And here's the thing, I'm not the first one to say this. Trevor Loudon was the first one that came out with this, and he's been on Brandon's show and different people shows. But Trevor said, look, it's called a red-green axis, a red-green alliance. The communist, Marxist, socialist, globalists, whatever you want to call them, are using Islam as the battering ram to destroy the West. And look, it's not a theory anymore. All you have to do is look at Europe. I just got done with an interview earlier today with a guy that lives in the UK, and I've talked to other people in the UK. They're on the brink of civil war with this Islamic invasion, with what's happened. And I asked them, what do your politicians, your elites say? And they go like, Brandon, they don't care about our nation. They're more loyal to the global government, the UN, and this is what they want to do. They want to destroy Christianity. Well, if that's happening there, it's happening here. And by the way, you mentioned the church is not in this fight at all. They are sitting on the sidelines, navel gazing, worried about their stupid nickels and noses, building their empires while they live in their mansions. They're not even in the game. So no wonder we're losing this.
Wow, that's so powerful. You'd think we'd be learning from looking around the world and seeing what's happening in Europe, seeing what's happening, as Pastor Sharam always talks about, what happens when Islam comes into a country like Iran that had been peaceful before, it fell. And then looking at this First Amendment protection, and that's what they get away, they slyly move in and they get protection they shouldn't have. Because if it was just a religion, yeah, fine. Even Sharam says, build your mosques or do whatever. Your religious aspects could be protected, praying, pilgrimages to Mecca, whatever you want to do. But it isn't just a religion, as you well know. It's a political force. It's got its own government, own financial system through the mosques, Sharia law. And Sharia law and Islam, they go hand in hand. You can't separate them. I think I heard Annie Cyrus say that. But what you said about the church not being in this fight, that's kind of what I want to shift to next, because you have an amazing church, Rock Harbor Church, and you are, it's a dwindling minority of churches that you see standing the way you are. Pastor Sharam, Dr. Andy Woods, it's really hard to find Bible preaching churches. So I want to tell you just a little bit about my church that I was in for a long time and get your take on it, because you say the church is the tip of the spear, and I think that's the name of your ministry, Tip of the Spear, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to be pushing back against the culture, to be the plumb line, the standard of truth. And yet so many are preaching these unrealistic sermons. We're going to have a golden age. We're just going to, usher in the kingdom. We know that's not happening. We're going to conquer the world and Christianize it, like Rick Warren and his peace thing, and the Doug Wilsons of the world, all these people. So I was at my church, and being Minnesota nice, I was trying to make it work. And Pastor Sharam Hadian came 3 years ago. I had him come to my church. And my pastor, unfortunately, was not very welcoming. After he did his talk, he took Sharam aside and basically told him, he's fear-mongering. And
Oh
my
no.
pastor, yeah, it was really bad. I mean, he didn't do it publicly, but Sharam told me, Melissa, I don't want to get in the way of your relationship with your church, but I really believe your church is compromised, because this is what my
Mm,
pastor would say. And when I play this clip, you're going to see what I mean. He would give kind of a
okay.
word salad, well, they're not worshiping it. We're worshiping the same God. They just don't know it yet. So this is what he says about Islam.
That's
Yeah, and
horrible.
he believed that Islam could be Abrahamic. So that was problem number one. And but I told Jeff, the director, I said, Jeff, it feels like when you see somebody you've broken up with, and there's still something, you feel for them, like you care about them, but you know that you can't be together. And that's how I feel.
Good
And
way
that
to
might
put it.
sound weird. You know what I mean? Like there's good qualities. My pastor believed in marriage between a man and a woman, and heterosexual marriages, and all these things he was right about, pro-life. But the Israel issue he would not take a stand on. And the more I realized what
Hmm.
was going on, I realized you're a covenant premillennial. Like you think everything was fulfilled at the first coming. But now you're going to love this. So this is what was the deal breaker for me, where I saw him do a podcast on Romans 11, and I watched it, and I was afraid to watch it because I knew I was going to hear what I didn't want to hear. And because he would just be slippery when I tried to get, what do you really feel about Israel? Because on the website it would say all the right stuff: 1,000-year millennial reign, pre-tribulation rapture. But that's not what I was hearing. Separation of nation of Israel. But when I play this clip for you, and it's 5 minutes, so this is Pastor James, and then there's a younger pastor. His name is Pastor Alex. And you're going to notice here that Pastor, I want to get your take. He seems very uncomfortable with kind of the way James is dismissing him, because Alex is saying, no, I see a separation between the church and Israel still. But James is nuancing it into we're all grafted into the Romans 11 tree. The roots are not the
Oh.
Abrahamic covenant. Everything is fulfilled in the first coming. So let's watch this, and then I want to see what you think about it.
Okay.
By the way, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Even as I'm sitting here, some would argue, and I'm recalling an argument, not an argument. When I say argument, a debate or discussion we had, all Israel will be saved. In the context of the verse, it's talking about Jewish people, right? Because he's having this debate between the Gentiles and the Jews, and that their way, and he would that they would all come to be saved, and that all. But when you read Israel, who's considered Israel today?
What do you mean? Like, are you saying
Like
in
you
faith?
are engrafted
we're
into
grafted
the
in faith.
vine.
Yeah.
There's also there's an argument, and we had this whole discussion because there was this idea that God's chosen people are still the Jews or Israel today.
Yeah.
And it's called Zionism. And if you're a Zionist, you're someone who believes that the Jewish people are the chosen people of God. They're kind of the favored people of God. And that's why we support the Jews, because we're Zionists, and anybody who attacks the Jews is an enemy of God. And then that's kind of the belief of that. And they take the idea, when you read that all Israel will be saved, who is the new Israel? It's not just the Jewish people.
Yeah.
It's those engrafted in the vine, which is what we just read about, those that Israel will be saved from all that will take place in the future. All of Israel will be saved.
Yeah.
And you can certainly make an argument that makes sense,
Yeah.
that all Israel will be saved for what's ahead in the future. And it doesn't mean all the Jews would be saved or a nation would be saved. You're making the argument that the people of Israel, who are believers in Christ and who have been engrafted in the vine, become that group of people.
Yeah.
So
one.
again, there have been many different approaches to this, especially now with all of the anti-Semitism. There are more people that hang on to that argument and are using it as this is what it really means.
Yeah.
I think you have to be careful when it's not clear.
Yeah.
I mean, you can look at it and
curiosity.
say, you can look at it and say, okay, Paul in his heart is talking about the Jewish people in this chapter.
Yeah. And that's what he continues to reference when he's talking about making them jealous. All of them will be saved. He's continuing on this theme. So,
verse 27 says, and this is my covenant with them. Who's the covenant with? It could be the believers. And I take away their sins. And that's what he does. Who's he taking their sins away? It could be the believers. I mean, you can make an argument for that. You can't just discount it. You know, are you seeing it?
Yeah, I can see it. It's hard. It's a tough one because
I mean, as Christians, you're raised, I think all of us are raised with this, what they call a Zionist point of view, where you're supporting the Jews. And I'm not recommending you or suggesting that you don't support Jews. You should support the Jewish
why
people.
I say that is because he talks about first in 25. Well, he's in the context of the passage, he's talking about a partial hardening has come upon Israel and he makes a separation between the Gentiles. So it's Israel, the Gentiles in that context. And then he said, in this way, all Israel will be saved. The deliverer will come from Zion. He will banish ungodliness from Jacob. And this will be my covenant with them when I take away their sins. So he's already making a distinction that Gentiles are grafted in and the Israelites. That's where I'm having trouble with.
Where is the deliverer coming from?
It's coming from Zion, and he will banish ungodliness from Jacob.
Godlessness.
Yeah. Ungodliness, mine.
Oh, yours is wrong.
ESV. I don't do NIV. ESV is my translation.
The deliverer will come from Zion. Who's the deliverer?
So, Jesus. But then, so I think this next one will help. Maybe 28. As regards the gospel, let me actually do it on here so you guys can see it with me when I'm looking at. As regards the gospel is concerned, they are enemies for your sake. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on the account of the patriarchs. So that's where I'm saying it's like there's still a distinction. Like they're enemies for our sake, the synagogue of Satan. They, especially in this like context, but for the sake of the patriarchs, they are loved on their account. For God's gifts and His call are irrevocable, just as you who are at one time.
Stop right there. They're irrevocable. The gifts and His call are irrevocable. And it talks about the covenant in verse 27. So I've had my fun with you. Now we'll go back to this.
Sorry, that was so long. Before you weigh in, let me just say, before that, he said, we're engrafted into the covenant God made with Abraham. Well, the church isn't a party to the covenant. You know, the church participates in the spiritual blessings, but ethnic Jews in Israel, as you know, are the party to the covenant. So then he's saying, who is the covenant with? As if it's the believers. So that's what I mean about word salad confusion. There's a lot there, but what did you take away from that?
Number one, it doesn't sound like they've had a class at all in hermeneutics because their exegesis of that scripture is juvenile. It is not understanding the context and what Paul is trying to say about Israel. The deliverer come out of Zion. Where's Zion at? Is it in the church? No, Zion is on a mountain right there by Mount Moriah. It's the lower hill coming to where King David ruled. It's Israel. I don't know how they gymnastically ran through that, but it's either one of two things. It's complete ignorance of hermeneutics, or it's intentionally trying to replace themselves and insert themselves as believers into the nation of Israel, which you cannot do. And so that's brutal. That's the worst thing I've ever seen in exegesis on Romans chapter 11. But nonetheless, I'm sure there's more out there. But that is a classic case of someone slipping that in and saying, we're Israel too, with the covenants made with us. Wait a second. What covenant are you talking about? Because if you're talking about the new covenant, which Paul is referring to, Jeremiah specifically says that covenant is made to the nation of Israel, not the church. Now, we partake in that, as you know, and as Andy Woods would teach, and in Sharam, we're all on the same page. We're all friends. But we're not overtakers. And so that is brutal. No wonder you had to leave. I don't blame you. I could not have stayed and put up with that because I know what that guy's up to.
Yeah, I just am grateful to hear you say that, because you can be made to feel kind of like you're crazy or you are being critical of everything. And even a lot of churches, there are a lot of people who just leave a church at any offense, or they're church hopping all over town. And I really tried to make it work. But that, as you said, that was the most confusing exposition I've ever heard. It doesn't have to be that confusing. I think it's very clear. And he kept saying, well, there are lots of different ways it could go, or not really. Who is it? Is it fulfillment? Is it covenant? Is it supersessionism, the new Israel, the true Israel? That's what it sounded like to me. And I was so uncomfortable with it. Even watching Alex, and my background is counseling, and I'm watching him look kind of crestfallen, and I feel like he's being dismissed, and he's trying to say, hey, I see a separation here. Even though I'm the younger pastor, I'm the understudy, I still
Right.
think Paul's talking,
Yeah.
and James is like, I've had fun with you. So, what I wanted to ask you before, we're going to take a break after this, but I know Pastor James is a smart guy and he has a great heart. Do you think people do this intentionally? Because he must have read Jeremiah 31, where it says this new covenant is made with the house of Israel, the house of Judah, like you said. Why did we need a new covenant? Because they broke the old covenant. A provision was going to be made for them to be restored at the end of the tribulation. And the church gets to partake in that overflow. But it seems like so many Gentile churches just want to take over everything for Israel. And I was raised like that. But is this just a true belief? Yep, we're all grafted into that big old happy tree. Or could it have something to do with missions or something to do with interfaith partnerships? Is there something more? I know you can't know for sure, but in your experience with running into probably a lot of churches in California that do this, what do you think motivates this?
I'm going to go back to the Apostle Paul and tell you what his opinion is of this when they do this. In Romans 11, the very passage that guy was trying to exegete and was sloppily doing, he talks about Gentile jealousy. And at the core of this, and I don't care what he thinks he knows or he doesn't know, at the core of this, when you come out and replace yourself with the nation of Israel, you are now showing that you're jealous of God's call on the Jewish people. This is Gentile jealousy. It's the same jealousy Cain had with Abel. It's old, ancient. It's old. It is the reason why even an unbeliever cannot stand the Jewish people, because they represent the chosen people. They represent God, and it's the same thing in the church. And Melissa, I got 30 years in ministry to back this up. Every time I see some guy monkey around with the scriptures and say he's the new Israel, or we just don't know, and they play dumb and stuff like that, it comes back to Gentile jealousy. It really does. And I'm going to hang my hat on the Apostle Paul in telling the Gentiles, you do not support the vine. It's them that support you. Get your head screwed on straight. Otherwise, he will cut you off. And I'm paraphrasing the Apostle Paul, but he was nailing the problem. And so I don't have to, guess what it is. When you exhibit, I'm going to take over, and we're the new Israel. We're the people of God now. That's Gentile jealousy. Romans chapter 11, bar none.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just even the way he was saying, kind of disparaging, they think they're the chosen people. Doesn't Deuteronomy 7 still stand? Did God change his mind about that? Chosen being servant, tool he's going to use to bring in the kingdom. So it's hard to believe that somebody could, find a way to justify teaching something when the Abrahamic covenant is the root. And as we know, we're not a party to the covenant, as much as the church might want to think they are. As you said, not taker overs, we're partakers in the spiritual overflow. Thank you for that. I mean, I appreciate your passion about that, because sometimes people just act like, well, because there's so many ways to be anti-Semitic, and some look uglier than others. Or churches will say, we're not replacement theology. We just think the church is the fulfillment. There's all these different terms used. And I think my church has just chosen, or the church I used to attend has chosen to just act like Israel's a non-issue. And we're just going to preach the gospel, and we're not going to spread hate. We're not going to worry about all of this Islamic takeover. We're going to do missions, and we're going to preach the gospel. And what's wrong with that?
Right. And that's every time I hear that, they hide behind that term. They sit there in their pleated khakis and their sweater vests and tish to all of us, you guys don't understand. We're trying to be nicer than God types of pastors. And here's the funny thing is they become anti-Israel, anti-Semitic with a smile. And at the same time, we really got to love the Muslim people. We really got to, and it's like they go overboard. And again, we got to share the gospel with everybody. I'm not trying to say that, but why did they go anti-Israel, but they go pro-Islamic? Why does that
Right.
happen? Why do they all of a sudden are supporting the Palestinians, and saying that Israel's occupying, and they start going with all the tropes and all that stuff? Because the minute theologically you get off track about Israel, you become indifferent to Israel, and then all of a sudden what starts working on you is the anti-Semitic tropes that start happening out there, and you actually start believing the lies. You start believing that there wasn't really 6 million people killed in the Holocaust. You start believing that, yeah, the Zionists are controlling the world and they're controlling the media. Yeah, how's that working for them? And they don't have any control of the media. What are you talking about? But they start believing the tropes. And then before you know it, they're listening to Tucker, and they're listening to Candace Owens, and they're listening to Nick Fuentes, and saying, yeah, America only, we need to get rid of Israel. They've been costing us millions of dollars for endless wars. And they're like, yeah, that sounds about right. And you know where it starts, Melissa? Throughout church history, it always started with replacement theology. I'm not saying just because someone believes in replacement theology, it makes them an automatic anti-Semite, but it opens the door for it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem.
Yeah. Well
And
said. Yeah.
it's happened.
Yeah. Going back to Augustine, I mean, it's such a slippery slope, and it's kind of like with addiction. Your tolerance increases as you go along, and you become comfortable with higher and higher levels of sin. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I'd like to talk about your take on the end times, how close we are, and really
Okay.
Revelation 13, building the perfect beast, I like to call it. We'll be right back on the Hope Report.
The wait is finally over. My Towels are back in stock, but not for long. Get a 6-piece My Towel set, regular $69.98, now only $39.98. Towels that actually work. What a concept. And that's not all. Check out our My Pillow bed sheets, only $29.88. Any color, any style, any size, even kings, regular $119.98, now only $29.88. And how about our limited edition premium My Pillows, made with Giza cotton and a designer gusset, made exclusively for you to thank you for all your support. Queens $17.98, Kings only $19.98. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to get My Towels for $39.98, My Pillow bed sheets only $29.88, and our limited edition My Pillow Queens $17.98 and Kings only $19.98. Quantities won't last long, so order now. With everybody talking about making America healthy again, I thought today'd be a great day to talk to all my fellow patriots about the importance of making your homes healthy again. Well, we have proudly partnered with airwaterhealing.com and their revolutionary whole home air purification system. The V3 from Air Water Healing does 3,000 square feet of purification. It eliminates dust, mold, viruses, and odors. But here's the part I love. They require no filters to ever be changed and virtually no maintenance. Whether you suffer from asthma, allergies, seasonal bronchitis, or just want to protect your family from the flu or even greater threats, don't wait to get your V3 from airwaterhealing.com today. Use code Lindell for 20% off in savings and free shipping. That's promo code Lindell at airwaterhealing.com.
All right, welcome back to the Hope Report. I've been having a fascinating hour. My first time sitting down with Pastor Brandon Holthaus, Rock Harbor Church in Bakersfield, California. I'm really hoping this will be, I don't want to put you on the spot since we're on the air, but I'm hoping it will be a recurring thing where I can have you back. And I know I've seen you all around the circuit, like Pastor Sharam, Andy, all the others, Patrick Wood. I get to go to Andy Wood's prophecy conference. He's going to do an interview with me. I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully boost up my credibility.
Yeah. No, the circle that you named, Andy. I know Andy's a good guy, good friend of mine. I know Sharam like the back of my hand. He's a good friend of mine.
Yeah.
So yeah, the funny thing is we all travel in the same circles, and what you're really seeing, Melissa, is that's the remnant leadership. That's who you're talking about, and it's a small circle. We all know each
Yeah.
other. We're all on the same page. We're all friends, by the way. And but yeah, that circuit is really small, by the way.
Yeah, I feel blessed. I really feel blessed that the Lord opened my mind. I grew up in a Presbyterian church. I never learned anything about prophecy, end times, the book of Revelation, any of it. 4 years ago, I did 2 chronological reads through the Bible out loud on a live stream. I was trying to keep myself occupied while I was fasting. And the Lord opened my eyes to all these unfulfilled prophecies and put it in my heart, like he did with Nehemiah when he told him, the Lord put it in my heart to rebuild the wall. He gave me this just righteous indignation or anger against people who were dismissing Israel churches. So that has been building, and the Lord's been putting people in my path, like Sharam, like Dr. Andy Woods, like you. I'm grateful for it because I think, we're blessed to have our eyes open to what's going on with the rest of the world spiraling into deception. And not that we shouldn't pray for them, but so many just taken over by Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and they have so many followers that follow them like blind sheep. They don't question anything. And it's really stunning. But I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry. I keep stamping on you when you're trying to talk. But I know we're probably running out of time. Maybe Jeff can tell me how much we have left. But with the last part, I wanted to ask you about, I saw your interview, as I said, on Brandon's show with J.B. Hickson. And was it not Annie Cyrus? Was somebody else on there? Maybe not. But you were talking about the end times.
Yeah, there's another, I can't remember the other guy that was on there, but yeah, we were talking about the end times, and really what's happening, Melissa, is if people have been paying attention to scripture and then you use scripture as your template to look at what's going on in the world, what you have is what we call a convergence of events that are happening at the same time. And this is why we understand, one of the reasons we're understanding the end times, because we have so many events converging at the same time. So you have Israel back in the land and the birth pains starting with her, but then you have the technology development with AI and quantum computing, and then you have now the infrastructure for a digital currency that's in place already, and then you have the infrastructure for digital identification. And look, I just talked to somebody in the UK this spring. They're supposed to give them a digital identification, and then Starmer ended up saying he let the cat out of the bag. And he says, yeah, along with the digital identification, we're going to have a digital money attached to it. Well, there you go. And so, you look at all these different things. You look at the apostasy of the church that's in full bloom. And you look at the desire for a global government. Hey, 20 years ago, when we used to tell people, hey, they're going to try to get a global government going, they thought we were all conspiracy nuts with tinfoil around our heads. And now it's not a conspiracy. They actually say it. And so with all of that, Melissa, whatever track you want to go down, we call it a convergence of events that things are shaping up to lead to the tribulation. And of course, we're going to be raptured before the tribulation. But what we're seeing is the signs for the tribulation. And it's like what Dr. Walvoord once said. He kind of gave a joke, and he said, when you see Christmas decorations, Thanksgiving is near. And he said that in regards to like the rapture, and he was basically making the point, when you see the things getting set up for the tribulation, then you know that you're getting closer to the rapture, even though the rapture is signless, because the rapture is supposed to happen before the tribulation. So we're definitely living in the end times. And I think the rapture itself will set off a lot of chaos in this world, especially the destruction of America. I really believe that the rapture will be the demise of America once God takes out all believers out of America. America's doomed.
Wow. Yes. Once the restrainer is removed, and it's just so stunning how fast this is happening. And I just remember a couple of years back hearing about AI and transhumanism and all this stuff. And now I've got people making little AI things of my likeness and sending them to me. And you can't tell what's real and what's fake, and without the Holy Spirit, people are doomed. But things are moving so fast. I know this fall we had another round of rapture predictors. You know how that happens every year at
Yeah,
the
always.
feast days. Everyone's like, okay, the rapture's coming. So of course we're not supposed to be date setting, but Sharam sometimes will talk about predictions. Not I'm prophesying this, but I'm predicting. And one of the things that he said was that Minneapolis was going to be claimed as Islam's upper house. And that happened in 2023 with the unanimous vote of the city council to broadcast the call to prayer 5 times a day across the city. So I'm wondering if you have any, looking at where we're at right now with Bible prophecy, any predictions or things that you're seeing for the coming year with the Abraham Accords being filled out, as the president likes to say, or this peace plan. I mean, that's a whole other topic we could do another show on, but trying to make this governing board for Gaza, how is that ever going to work?
Yeah.
It seems like we're in this stalemate where something's got to give. And when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction comes upon them. I don't think Israel is saying peace and safety yet, but how close are we to that? And what else do you see happening in the coming year?
Well, one of the things, trajectories or what I'm projecting out is you're going to have a collapse of the economy, because even under Trump's watch, the economy is not being fixed. We are spending like drunk sailors on leave, and the debt is never in human history have we had this amount of debt ever. And it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable to bring in masses and masses amounts of people, put them on the government dole, and then continue to have taxpayers fund these people. It's not sustainable. California's not sustainable the way we're functioning. Everybody's leaving. So the first thing we have to understand is a collapse of an economy is a likelihood. I'm not saying it's going to be, but it's a likelihood. Now, what does that do? Well, I can tell you, if we collapse the economy, and it's a global economy will collapse, they're going to move us to a digital currency as a safeguard. And the problem is, Melissa, when you move to a digital currency, you're going to lose your wealth. Every time you see historically, when someone moves to a different currency, or a nation switches their currency, the nation will lose 40% of its value when they switch to a different currency. Well, again, that's just historical facts. If we move to a digital currency, do not think you're going to retain a lot of your wealth. You're going to lose a lot of your wealth. You're going to lose a lot of your retirement. And it's just, you will have the same number in there, but the purchasing value will not be the same. And this is why we have advocated for people getting other sources of wealth that are more tangible, more biblical assets of wealth, if this does happen. So a digital currency is on its way. It's inevitable. Along with that is a digital identification. And then along with that will be a social credit score. Hey, I'm glad Donald Trump's in office, but we're just one administration away of being like the UK, to where you're going to lose freedom of speech. If you're in the UK and you talk against Islamic immigration, dude, they will arrest you. You can't say that. If you talk about the government, you can't say that. We're following in that footsteps. And so if you have AI tracking your digital identification as some type of biometric thing on your body, they will know everything you do. They will know everything you buy, and you will lose all freedom. And we don't have to be in the tribulation for that. That stuff is going to be the setup prior to that. And I think that's some of the things we're going to see. Another projection is you're going to continue to see a rejection of Israel. And you're going to see, so now it's on the right, and it's going to become more global, and people are going to reject Israel. And eventually, maybe we're one administration away, America will eventually turn its back on Israel, to force Israel to look for another protector. And that protector will eventually be the Antichrist. The Antichrist will be Israel's new best friend. They will think this is the guy that's going to save us. So at some point, the United States turns its back on Israel. Well, I can already see, with the conservative element right now becoming anti-Semitic, of saying America first, and really America first means American isolation. That's what they mean. Of that movement catching wind with a lot of people, especially our young people, the millennials and Gen Z. do not give a rip about Israel. They have not been taught about it, and they could care less. And all they want to do is be isolation. So those are the three big things I would say that's on the foreground.
That's a really good breakdown. And one of the things I appreciate about you and the others I've mentioned, that you're able to parse out what the current administration is doing well, and President Trump, the restraint of evil that's happening, and what the alternative would be if he were not in office. But then to also be pragmatic and knowing he's not going to be here forever. There will be future administrations. And my concern, or one of them, and I heard you say this in the interview with Brannon, that I'm uncertain so far President Trump's been a strong ally to Israel, but he seems to be setting up, this is what you said in that interview, setting up the whole Middle East to come against Israel. Friends with Qatar, invites al-Shara to the White House, this terrorist or jihadist in a suit. Says Erdogan is a great guy. Turkey wanted to revive the Ottoman Empire and the Caliphate. So it's hard for me to reconcile that, because I do believe he thinks financial incentives will appease the agenda of Islam to take over the world. And is it just he doesn't have doctrinally stable? That's what Andy Woods would say, doctrinally stable. Paula Woods, doctrinally unstable. Does he just not have proper advisement? Does he really think the art of the deal is going to be enough to make them change their jihadist ways, I guess?
I think it's a couple things. One of the things that you have to understand, Trump, he grew up in a church with Norman Vincent Van Peel or something like, I can't remember the guy's name, but it was this positive, self-talk type of thing. And so someone like Paula White is perfect for him as far as what kind of Christianity he's used to. So that version of Christianity that Paula White had, or the church he grew up in, is not what you and I believe as far as Christianity. I'm not saying the guy's not saved, because people say they've led him to the Lord or whatnot, but as far as his Bible knowledge, it's zero. Okay, and so Paula White's not helping them out with that. But I think there's several things. Number one, he's looking at everything as a financial transaction, and that he thinks the Muslim world, if he appeases them with financial transactions, then they're just going to be normal players in the game. And I think that's a fault of his, of not understanding Islam and what it means, what that religion / political ideology wants to do. It wants to create a caliphate and control the entire world. And they have no problem lying. And that's one of the things I can't believe his advisors don't tell him. Hey, they can do taqiyya, they can do hudna, and they can lie to you to make a deal. So he goes over there in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Qatar, it's like, that's the major funder of terrorism around the world. What are you doing? Don't appease them. Don't even take a plane from them. But he took a plane. And so I think Trump is ignorant on that, number one. And that he thinks that finances can win them over. I got news for him. Israel thought the same thing, and they thought that giving finances to the Palestinians would assuage the Hamas and Fatah and all the other Islamic jihad that's in that area. And the very money they gave him, the very jobs they gave him, didn't appease them. They still wanted to kill Jews. And we saw that on October 7th in 2023. So giving Muslims money doesn't appease them. That's number one. The second thing is, when you start dividing the land, and this is a big problem with Trump, he doesn't understand that dividing the land brings the curses of the Abrahamic curse on you. And so he wants to run the Palestinians with a board. He had Tony Blair on there, and of course he's off now, but still they want to run the Gaza. You can't let anyone run the Gaza other than Israel. That's who needs to run it. So that's a problem. Now, three, and here's the problem. Trump is letting Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner do all these Middle Eastern deals and run the show. Even though Jared Kushner is not supposed to be involved. He's supposed to take a time out, but he's definitely involved. Both Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner have taken money from Saudi Arabia and Qatar in their investment firms. In fact, Steve Witkoff was bailed out, I think, $600 million from either Saudi Arabia or Qatar. I have to look at my notes, but it's one of those two countries bailed him out of a $600 million thing that he owed in Manhattan. So right now we have a problem. We have two people in the Trump administration that are compromised by taking money from Saudi Arabia and Qatar. So therein lies the problem there. And so we got there's Trump is unfortunately setting up Psalm 83 invasion and Gog of Magog invasion, whether he knows it or not, by letting these guys be players in this world market. And you can't do that. And so anyway, I'm very disappointed in Trump in that.
I agree. A lot of concerns there. Joel chapter 3, dividing the land of Israel, telling them they can't annex their own land. What's up with that? So there'll definitely be, divine consequences if he chooses to go forward with that. Pastor Brandon, I hope we can continue the conversation soon.
Yeah,
we're,
sure.
we're already out of time, but we have maybe 30 seconds left. If you could just tell people where to find you, all your socials and stuff like that, that'd be great.
Yeah, just go to the two websites, Brandon Holthaus Ministries, and then go to rockharborchurch.net. And either one, you can find me, find our information. You can find our videos. We got tons of them on YouTube and Rumble, and you guys can find us there.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with me. I really appreciate your stand and what you're doing out there, again, behind enemy lines like I am here, but we're fighting the good fight, and we'll
Amen.
keep doing that until we see the return of our blessed Lord and Savior. Thanks,
Amen.
Pastor.
You betcha. God
All
bless
right.
you.
God bless.